In aviation, airworthiness is the measure of an aircraft's suitability for safe flight. Initial airworthiness is demonstrated by a certificate of airworthiness issued by the National Aviation Authority in the state in which the aircraft is registered, and continuing airworthiness is achieved by performing the required maintenance actions. In Nigeria, this onus falls on the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority to issue the initial certificate, while continuing airworthiness is the operator's duty. On this edition, that's our focus. Plus, the NG Eagles Air Operating Certificate debacle takes on another twist. A warm welcome to Aviation This Week on Channels Television. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Bukola Joe Uketumbi. Aviation provides the only rapid worldwide transportation network, which makes it essential for global business. It also generates economic growth, creates jobs, and facilitates international trade and tourism. In the aviation mix, sustaining a viable airline industry is important, and this cannot exist without airworthy aircraft, and what is also described as continuing airworthiness of this craft. For passengers who travel every day, this is their description of aircraft safety.
The flight coming back to base is for their safety. When a pilot attempts some maneuvers and find out that he cannot continue, before he returns back to base, it's a very hard decision to make. But basically, if he has seen that to the best of the interest of the passengers and the safety of his flight, he will return you back to base. He's not doing that because he doesn't know what to do, but he doesn't want to risk it. He would not prefer doing it 50-50.
The scariest moment is when during rainy season, when you are in higher altitude, you lose altitude. Definitely everybody screams and calling Jesus and Allah. So naturally you feel it. That's my scariest moment during rainy season when we enter turbulence.
Away from passengers to a hangar facility in Lagos, where the top bus here takes us through a D-check currently going on an helicopter as part of a maintenance schedule.
This is an Augusta 139 helicopter. An 8 years inspection is the highest level of maintenance that can ever take place on this aircraft, as approved by the manufacturer of this aircraft and the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, NCAA. It's a 12-seater with crew 14-seater helicopter, one of the best and the fastest here, stripping off of the engines, removing the engine, the gearbox, the entire cockpit, the instrument, the entire flight controls.
So what exactly is airworthiness and continued airworthiness?
Airworthiness is the heartbeat of aviation. If an aircraft is not airworthy, you can't fly it. You can't even start the engine. So, but one thing we must get is that the continuing airworthiness of any aircraft is the responsibility of the operator. This is key for us to understand, because the operator has the responsibility to ensure that the aircraft is airworthy. If there's any, God forbid, any plane crash or any incident, the person that the customers talk to is the operator, not the civil aviation. So if I rigged a particular aircraft engine, I'm licensed, 20, 30 years experience, fine. But somebody else must come and check if what I did is correct and countersign and put his or her license number there and full name. So what I do today on any aircraft as an aircraft engineer, 5-10 years later, if that aircraft has issues, it can be traced to me because there's a record.
The airworthiness of an aircraft is concerned with the standards of safety incorporated in all aspects of its construction. The big birds usually go through checks across all components.
Engines are driven, some aspects of the engines are on and they are on hard time. That means you cannot run them beyond their approved life. If the manufacturer says this engine should run for 3,000 cycles, that means 3,000 landings, 3,000 flights. You can't do 3,001. So there is that other aspect. But there's this other aspect that says if an engine is on ground, you must run it every 10 days to make sure that the engine is still in good shape. So in the first scenario, when you say 3,000 landings, and therefore you can't run the engine beyond 3,000 landings, that is hard time.
The Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority's functions and oversight of all the airworthiness includes air transport operators and approved maintenance organizations. No aircraft can operate without a certificate of airworthiness, and this is issued for an aircraft by the National Aviation Authority in the state in which the aircraft is registered. This certificate attests that the aircraft is airworthy insofar as the aircraft conforms to its type design. On our interview segment, the Director General of the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority speaks to the issue of airworthiness and what is expected of all parties in the safety chain. There's more from him.
It's unusual. Human beings can't fly, so flying its own is an extraordinary experience, and it's normal for people to be scared in flights. It's normal, you know. There's nothing extraordinary there. I understand, but what I want the traveling public to understand, the NCA is ensuring continuous airworthiness of all the aircrafts that fly in Nigeria. We do check them. When do we ensure they go through the due maintenance, and when they do, they bring the records, we cross-check and confirm before we sign the airworthiness certificates. That's what we do through our surveillance, through our oversight. When these aircrafts come from maintenance, we go through the maintenance checklist and the maintenance records and ensure whatever is due is included in the maintenance. And when that is done, we cross-check them. And we do RAM checks, we do spot checks, we check the aircraft's systems. We do a lot of things, and that's the way. That's what we call our surveillance. It could be an audit, it could be a spot check, it could be an organized visit, it could be a surprise audit. So we do all that to ensure that the airlines comply with all the airworthiness matters they are supposed to do. An indication does not necessarily mean the door is not locked. I've had indications like that before. It could be the sensor. There's a problem with the sensor of the door. It could just be an indication problem. And if the door is not locked properly, the cabin pressure will leak. You'll hear noise. A lot of things will happen. The cabin will leak. So it's more than likely it might just be an indication problem. Understand, aircrafts are mechanical, they're electrical, there are many systems that could have issues. And indication problem, some of the sensors are very, very peculiar. A little moisture or dust in it can lead to a wrong indication. I'm not saying we've not had incidents, but if the aircraft, the door indicated it was not locked and the aircraft came back and landed safely without any further incident, then the door was locked. It's more than likely it's an indication. Believe me, if the door opens in flight, it's going to be disaster. People will probably be sucked out of the plane. So, and doors, the mechanism of closing the doors is you have secondary, you have primary, you have secondary, you have all sorts of things. You know, the air pressure seals it. There are bayonets that go into the up and on the sides. It's pretty very strong. It will take significant and disastrous failure for a door to fail in flight, except of course if you don't operate it properly from the ground. So if you don't even lock it on the ground before you even depart, it's going to tell the captain there's going to be a door indication. Like some cars, if the door is not properly locked, it will ding ding and it will show you the light, you know. And some cars actually show you which door is not locked. So it's the same in the aircraft. Well, I'll tell you, as 40 years experience as a pilot, whenever you have a warning, the best thing is to get the aircraft down and ensure it's just confirmed it's just a faulty warning, not an actual thing. You don't want to start playing with the lives of people in flight. When you have anything, get the plane down as soon as practicable, check and see what is the cause of that indication. It could be there's an ongoing failure you don't know. So you need to confirm. Why should I continue if I depart Abuja, I'm 20 minutes to Abuja, why do I want to continue 30, 40 minutes to Lagos and risk the life of people? It's better for me to come back to Abuja, land, have my folks, engineering folks check and ensure it's not a major problem, or if there's a problem, they fix it. You don't want to risk life. There's absolutely nothing wrong with an air return. Air return is a precautionary measure to ensure that the aircraft is fit to fly. So when you get a warning or an indication that's abnormal, you want to ensure it's just what it is. You want to ensure the system is okay.
This is a briefing of the National Association of Aircraft Pilots and Engineers. The issue on the front burner is the autonomy of the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, following comments from the House Committee on Aviation that the regulator should not issue an air operating certificate to the new airline NG Eagle being floated by the Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria. This comment from the House Committee is not also unconnected with the petition presented by another aviation union called ANAP earlier in the month. For the body of airline pilots and engineers, this comment from the House Committee smacks of political interference on safety issues.
Section 30 of the Civil Aviation Act 2006 clearly spelled out powers of the authority and empowers it to function without political interference. I quote, "The authority is empowered to regulate aviation in Nigeria without any political interference." Whereas we recognize the constitutional role of the legislature to oversight the agency, and is well appreciated, but a situation where they dictate what the authority should give an AOC or not give, in our opinion, amount to gross political interference and is counterproductive. It falls short of global best practices.
Just as NAPE is concerned about the autonomy of the regulator, so is this veteran pilot who believes that the National Assembly should be seen to be maintaining this autonomy and not working against it.
I would say that is rather unfortunate. It's like we are going back. And I think the National Assembly in itself, for those of us who understand it and the international community, they'll be looking at them in conflict with themselves. Because the same National Assembly ensure that the NCA becomes autonomous. If the ministry had said, for example, that they must not issue certain AOC, the National Assembly is where we would have run to go and complain. But now who do we run to? When the person who should step in and say, no, we are not a court, but this process, you have to leave them to do their job in according to the law. So it's unfortunate. I really don't know what to say, but I think NCA is handicapped in this case. They are not protected, because they have taken their autonomy from them.
This appears not to be a good time for the aviation industry, as the sector will have to put itself together post the pandemic. Arik Air has been under the receivership of AMCON since February 2017. The departure frontage of the Murtala Mohammed International Airport now short. The temporary closure is to allow for the completion of this ongoing canopy installation. To ease vehicular and human facilitation around the area, the authority has opened the drop-off zone of the new international terminal.
We're trying to see how the two can be integrated, how the two can work together. So what is going on is the concourse from the arrival up to departure. So there's going to be a canopy covering the departure. And because it's crossing the road, we are looking at the safety implications. That's why the place was cordoned off, so that at least it will allow work to go on. The total construction, I wouldn't know. But this one that is affecting the departure is going to last for 8 weeks.
The covered walkways are now linked for pedestrians to connect the old and new terminals, with a new departure bridge serving as an exit to motorists.
We made some walkways too, one at each end of the terminal. Towards the delta end, we have a walkway that's from the new terminal into it. So you park around the area and you navigate. And then if you are going towards the A gate, where you have the BA, the Air France and the other airlines, there's another walkway. So your vehicle can move towards that side. Then you come in through the walkway and enter the terminal.
The airport authority says it's keen on this infrastructure upgrade so it can provide better facilitation for passengers.
The airport in Indonesia's resort island Bali held a simulation exercise on October the 9th to make sure procedures were in place to welcome back international tourists who have been mostly shut out due to the coronavirus pandemic. International travelers, including those from China, New Zealand and Japan, among others, are expected from October 14. Bali's airport officials during a tour showed protocols in place to welcome the first international flights, as hundreds of airport staff played the role of foreign visitors arriving for a holiday. Staff on duty ensured the tourists were keeping a distance from each other. They checked documents and ushered them into rooms for COVID-19 tests before they are picked up to be taken to where they will be quarantined for 8 days. Bali residents are excited about the opening up, as tourism is the main income for the island. Now to Britain, as the country's Transport Minister Grant Shapps has announced that Britain is scrapping tough COVID-19 quarantine requirements for 47 destinations, including South Africa and Thailand. The changes, which was introduced early this week, will make it easier for people to arrive from countries, including India and Turkey, in the latest relaxation of the rules.
But things have settled down a lot, and that's why this
Shapps calls it a step forward for Britain's travel sector. The tourism industry has essentially lost 2 full summers after travel restrictions imposed to contain the spread of COVID-19 deterred many people from going abroad.
One of the great things now with people fully vaccinated from the UK is it's much easier to allow people to travel, and also to accept 37 other countries whose vaccinations we will now be able to accept. We will still want to have that check-in of a lateral flow test, but of course if that turns out to be positive, people will be able to immediately take a PCR test.
From removal of air travel restrictions to companies looking to offset the carbon cost of travel, which was one of the subjects at the recently concluded IATA's annual meeting, participants committed to net zero carbon emissions by 2050, in a move that ties the sector's climate action to the 2015 Paris Accord for the first time. For the CEO of JetBlue, the company has its plans in line with the decision.
What you're increasingly going to see from companies is them taking a much more active role in offsetting the cost of their the carbon cost of their travel. I think they're going to also look to airlines that have demonstrated a strong commitment to this. Only last week JetBlue announced our biggest acquisition of sustainable aviation fuel. That means within 2 to 3 years, about 30% of our fuel in and out of New York will be sustainable. So I think that businesses, of course, are going to want to address this climate change issue aggressively, but we think they're going to be able to do it in a way that still enables business travel to take place.
Beyond JetBlue's alignment with the decision, aircraft maker Embraer says the post-COVID world is a different world as the focus is now more on the environment.
Post-COVID, we'll see a different world ahead of us. So we see more focus on environment. We see more focus on regionalization with companies stepping away a little bit more from the long-distance relations with suppliers because there was a lot of impact there. And of course, digitization. We do a lot more meetings by video. I think we've all gotten used to that. Now, of course, we're all dying to go back and meet each other, but we do think that some of the travel will disappear due to video, some of the travel will disappear due to the regionalization. And we see airlines picking up on those trends, and especially also the sustainability. We see that airlines now start to look forward how they can improve their fleets. What we should not forget is that environment, the biggest change that we can make is taking aircraft that already use less fuel now, because then you don't have to offset, you don't have to look for alternate fuels because you don't use the fuels in the first place.
IATA, which represents groups of 290 airlines, including dozens of state carriers, also accelerated a 12-year-old pledge to halve emissions from 2005 levels by 2050 and involves tackling an extra 300 million tons of carbon through measures such as bio-based sustainable aviation fuels or hybrid electric technology.
Alexandrina Denisenko is a senior flight attendant with 7 years of experience at a Ukrainian airline. On the job, she sometimes does not get a spare minute to sit down during a flight and dreams of resting her swollen legs after spending hours wearing heels. As if an answer to prayer, SkyUp Airlines, a privately owned Ukrainian airline which employs Denisenko, decided to put an end to heels, pencil skirts and tight shirts after collecting feedback from flight attendants about their uniform. The new SkyUp uniform for women now includes white sneakers, a loose orange suit with trousers, a silk scarf and white t-shirts which now replaces blouses, all made by Ukrainian brands.
God forbid, but if a crew has to do a landing in water and an evacuation, heels can damage the ladder and it won't be very comfortable to swim in a skirt. I think our uniform is comfortable under regular, ordinary circumstances, but if, God forbid, an emergency happens, we will feel as much comfortable as it is possible, taking into account the circumstances, thanks to the uniform.
The company said they researched the history of cabin crew uniforms and decided to ditch what they called conservative elements of a flight attendant's look. Braids will now replace a tight bun or ponytail hairstyle. Authorities at the airline say the cabin crew is responsible for safety, and that is why the uniform must be comfortable as they move around. The new uniform will be officially launched in late October. And what a nice shift in the uniform. This is where Aviation This Week winds down. See you next time, God willing. I'm Bukola Joe Oketumbi.